far as, I know they were both
Take one.
supporters of chef timers. I didn't know if Julie.
Julie started when she was in, what was in RPI in art school, and she would work summers there, she and Sam Good and all those people, and she became a lifetime member. I think the last set she did was probably for Little Abner, Tom Horner, and I think that was in the 60s sometime.
Yeah, Julie did so much. You know, I always use Julie and John Will whenever I think that I'm so busy doing things, because then I realize that I really am not as busy as I
John
want
Will
to be.
never stopped, he went all the time.
Yeah.
So did Julie.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we're just gonna have a discussion and
Shoot.
see where it goes. Tell me how you got into advertising in Roanoke. What brought you here?
I came here when I got out of the service in 1955, April. Went to work for Channel 10, and that was back in the black and white days, and all of television was live. And worked there for 14 years. Julie and I both worked there for a good while. And then when the station was sold, it used to be owned by Shenandoah Life. That's what the SLS, Shenandoah Life Stations. And once it was sold, I went with my mentor, Freddie Lee Costafferney, because he and John Will had started an agency. Jack left Hieronymus in '59, and Fred left the station in '59. And they started Associated Advertising. And they had asked me to join them then, but I was too enamored of TV at that time, and stayed with it all through color and to local color, et cetera, and left there in June of '69. And Julie and I both joined Fred and Jack. We all went way back, and had 22 years at Associated then.
Tell me about, because so many, Associated had a very long run. I mean, I guess is what, 30 years or so. But tell people who don't know who Freddie Lee was, what that amazing man was.
Freddie Lee Costafferney, better known to a lot of people here as the Freddie Lee Orchestra then, because he was sort of the Lawrence Welk of the Roanoke Valley and beyond. He played at the Greenbrier, Homestead, Cavalier, Virginia Beach, etc. And John Will, he was also a graduate of what was in RPI. He was about 10 years ahead of us. And he had worked at Hieronymus and was sort of Mr. Arts in Roanoke in those days. And still was till his demise. But he and Jack, I'm being repetitious now, he and Jack started Associated Advertising in '59.
When did you meet Julie?
In art school,
Yeah.
in Richmond.
Tell those people who weren't fortunate enough to meet her about Julie, about what she did.
She was an amazing talent.
Start again because I talked over you. Just start because she was amazing talent.
Yes, she was an amazing talent, and had a very active mind. As John Will Creasy said one time, she was an artist for the mind as well as the eye, and had a great background in literature and the theater, so forth and so on. And she just worked constantly on everything. Everything interested her, and did everything from television, graphics, to everything that we would do in this business, including TV commercials, print, as well as electronic media. And later in life, she got very interested in designing stained glass, and has windows in, let's see, the windows 4 or 5 different places in Virginia Beach, Richmond, Charlottesville, Roanoke Valley. In fact, the last project she completed was for Baylor down in Waco, Texas, a series of windows down there. the architect who had hired her to do a church window there in Virginia Beach, liked her work so much, he got her commission to do those too. So we worked together constantly. It was work 24 hours a day in those days.
What do you think was, what did you find most amazing about working with Julie?
Her amazing talent and just her ability. I admired her work so much. It was just, I thought, excellent.
You had about as long a run as a creative director as anybody in this market ever has.
Well, go ahead.
What attracted you to advertising? What do you like about advertising, Charles?
Well, I always said I was too stupid to do anything else, so no, I always liked to draw and went to RPI, graduated from there. Then after a bout with the service, came out and loved television in those days, in the early days, and that was it.
What do you remember about working with John Will Creasy?
Another amazing talent, and sort of a Renaissance man, I guess you would say, because he was not only, he was a great watercolorist. He did lots of watercolors, sold about as many as, and I think he still had commissions he had not finished when he died, sadly. And he was also great with display. He was good with copy. He was also an interior decorator, did a lot of interior decorating jobs on the side.
Can you tell me some of the nonprofits that you know of that John Will helped start? I mean, to me, that's one of the amazing things that people don't understand.
Well, he was on so many boards of everything. He was on the board of Mill Mountain Playhouse. He was on the board of Hieronymus Department Store. He was very instrumental in getting the sidewalk art shows started here, the one in Salem as well as the one in Roanoke. And he was just, I guess you would say, a ball of fire. He was always working.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure, although Bob Slaughter got a lot of the due credit, I'm not sure that D-Day ever gets off the ground without.
Well, Jack worked with Bob Slaughter, and as we did. And you're probably aware that Julie designed the logo for the National D-Day Memorial in Bedford. And I was told him, it was a pleasure to be in a small part of that, but really wanted it to succeed.
You guys also did a lot when Center in the Square was coming on, didn't you?
Yes, here again, Julie designed the logo, the original logo for
Center in the Square.
No, I'm sorry. Let me backtrack.
Yeah.
For the Civic Center. And we opened the Civic Center, and she designed a logo in '68, and we opened the Civic Center in '71. We brought Barbara Eden here as a headliner, and that was quite an event in those days.
Of all the projects that you worked with and did in your career, which one were you most proud of and most pleased with?
All of them. No, there were some that I maybe wouldn't want to claim, but basically you try to forget those and remember the good ones.
I still catch myself every now and then singing, "Good things happen
When we get together," yeah, oh yes.
What advertising person that you met, and I'm going to exclude Julie and John Will because of your closeness with them. What advertising person that you met stands out to you and your memory as particularly admirable?
Well, I'm sure there are quite a few. Off the top of my head, my gosh, I don't know. There were, I think there was a fellow named Japelski used to be with the Packet Group, was a very good designer. And then there was, I can't remember the names now. Cecil Edmonds in the Packet Group, he was a fantastic copywriter, had been a writer for the newspaper, as you probably well know, and then he was the original group. It was Brand, Edmonds, and Packet.
Can you say that again? We had some noise outside about Cecil Evans.
Oh, well, I don't know where you want me to start. I say originally he was a writer for the Times World, and then he, along with Howard Packet and I forget the other fellow's name, and Cabell Brand, they started Brand, Edmonds, and Packet. It was originally creative advertising, I think, and then they changed it to Brand, Edmonds, and Packet. And of course, it's changed over the years to the Packet Group now. I think they're a division of the agency in Richmond.
What was it like? What was the company that it was very different when you were in the midst of your career? There were a lot more banks, a lot more hospitals, and different agencies could pursue. There was probably a lot more competition in a different way, and the budgets were probably not as good. What was it like when you were in the midst of your career?
In advertising agency business, not television. Well, I guess it's pretty much the same as it maybe is today. It's the technology has all changed. It was much more labor intensive than the work that we did, and there used to be many agencies here, but they all seem to have a niche of some sort. I think Claude Harrison's agency had Colonial American Bank. I think at one time Halk had Blue Cross Blue Shield. We had what was then First National Exchange Bank and Hieronymus for a while. And then we sort of became a button-down bank financial, as you well know, agency. But then we later got into the medical things with Lewis Gale Hospital was one of our accounts. And a lot of smaller banks as well. So we had Alamo Savings Association down in San Antonio. And so Roanoke eventually sort of became a branch town because of all bank mergers. And two of our biggest clients we lost because the Fed shut them down. They had been S&Ls, then known as savings banks by then. And one was Alamo Savings Association down in San Antonio, and the other one was Core East Bank here, which was shut down too. So that's when my wife and I had started our own graphics design business.
Who were the people if an account was up for grabs, who were the agencies that you were most likely to compete against for?
It would vary, I would assume. I know that Halk was one. You didn't always know who was competing against you. But we were very fortunate, in the agency business, I think, to have gone on that long as we did. When we were Channel 10, we were more or less a house agency for the TV station.
You worked with Andy Peterson, right?
Well, yes, Andy worked for a short time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, Freddie Lee was the original promotion manager there. In fact, I wrote a letter to the paper not too long ago when they had that big spread about Channel 10 being so many years old. And I told them this one omission I just had to mention was that in 1968, not that, 58, excuse me, 58, we brought the Today Show here with Dave Garraway, Jack LaScooley, and Frank Blair. It was in Roanoke for 2 days or 3 days, and that was rather exciting.
I'll bet. Over the years, what advertising, what local regional advertising that came out of Roanoke that stands out to you that you remember particularly as being good or interesting?
Well, some very good advertising came out of here, you know. Most of the agencies here didn't have the budgets that these huge agencies have, but a lot.
Any particular favorites? I always fall back on the like I said, yeah, I'll be humming the Core East jingle on my way,
Yes.
my deathbed. But of course, Valleydale was one that I remember.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember Dominibank and Save Your Day? That was an early one we did. When we first had ATMs here, they named them Dominibanks.
What was it like working with Dominion Bank? I mean, that was a pretty big account.
Oh yeah. What was it like?
Yeah.
It was like, I guess, most financial accounts. We did everything from annual reports to ads to television to billboards, you name it. Annual reports were always a joy.
But they were on, the only thing, when I went to Associated, the only thing we were still doing was Dominion of the Cumberlands, where we would do that big party out in Grundy, the big concert.
Oh, yes.
Why do you think a community like Roanoke benefits from having a strong creative community that's involved and engaged, like the people you've worked with and like you've been here yourself? How's that help our quality of life?
Well, there used to be a slogan we used in Ad Club years ago: without advertising, you wouldn't know. So we try to keep people informed. And I think anytime you have a nucleus of creative people, I think that's to the community's advantage. Plus, you also have the advantage of a lot of public service that agencies or creative people donate to the community.
You came out of a school that many people would consider an art school. Do you consider advertising art?
It can be. Not always.
Do you miss press type?
Not really.
Because so many people, Juliet will never know what it was like to do an ad when you started doing an ad. What was the process for doing an ad in the 60s, 70s?
Well, you start with a concept or a goal you want to reach and try to do it to the best of your ability to try to get audience and customers. I don't know that the actual ideas really change that much. It's mainly the technology now. In the old days of television, all the work was done by hand, and then for your station IDs and that type of thing, they were shot on 35 millimeter slides and went into a slide chain. And whoever the announcer was, whether it was a temperature slide or a Merry Christmas slide or a promotional slide, they would put that one in the slide chain and announce over it when it did.
Something that you may or may not feel qualified to comment because you're not a woman. But one of the things that I've noticed that I thought was interesting is our area had significant women playing a role in advertising. Julie stands out, Mamie stands out, Claire, Judy Perfader, in advance of a lot of the bigger cities giving that kind of opportunity to women. Do you have any idea why that? I mean, we're a southern town. Do you have any idea why so many women, especially Julie, stands out, but so many women made a mark when they weren't given the opportunity to in other bigger towns?
Yeah. I don't know why that is. You would think it would have been in the bigger cities quicker than it would have been here. You're right. There were quite a few women active in advertising in one form or another.
One of the things I discovered when we were going through this for background is I found the original ad-fed minutes from 1953, and a woman was ad-fed president.
Yeah.
Then, along about 1956, they said a young man named Jack Creasy had agreed to be their membership chair.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I may actually need to go and sit down and talk to you and just get some ideas of some of
Yeah.
There was a couple other questions I had. What do you think makes this community, the Roanoke advertising community, special?
Why do I think it's special?
Or do you think it's special?
Well, of course, I would think it's special because I spent my life in it and very interested in it. I think you have a great degree of creativity here that maybe you wouldn't expect in a smaller city.
That leads me to another. Everybody always says, to be really successful in this business, you need to have gone to New York and work, or you need to go to San Francisco or some of the hot shops. But
Yeah.
do you think the talent that we have here, the Julies, how do you think they stack up? I've always felt that they were.
I think it depends on some individuals would do very well in a bigger place like New York, and some people that was their goal. I mean, they used agencies as a stepping stone to a bigger agency, a regional agency, a big city agency, Madison Avenue.
I think he was a little older than you. Did you know Otto Whitaker when he was here?
I've heard the name, but
Yeah, he was a writer at Howell, but I think he was more.
I think that was before my time.
Yeah, I think it was too. And he did that. He went from here to.
We were all of us were young once, and I think I was too young for that one, believe it or not.
Yeah. You ever had an idea that you just loved, that you pitched, but you couldn't get the client to buy?
Sure. Don't we all?
Yeah.
Haven't we all?
Haven't you remember?
I won't comment on that, but I think that's one of the frustrations you run into all the time in this business. Some of us are fortunate to have clients that can go along with those things, and others are not. So. And sometimes you have to do things against your better judgment as well.
You had, like I said, you had as good a career as anybody did here, and you were always known for being someone who was demanding of good work, but not unfair or unreasonable about it. If you had it to do all over again, what did you enjoy most? What would have you done more of, and what would have you done differently?
I'd have probably done it all over the same way. I really don't have any regrets. I had a nice career.
You worked with just a tremendous group of folks. It's just an amazing team there. I think you covered about all my questions. What's the funniest thing that you remember that happened here? You got anything funny, random that you remember that happened? We always had a good time.
Well, I don't know. I'd have to think about that a moment. I remember a lot of the frantic times that always goes with bad business. And I remember one time John Will was in the office, and he was supposed to be on a plane to go to see some client out of state. Aren't you supposed to be at the airport now? Oh my gosh. And he grabbed up his samples or whatever he was carrying and went dashing out, and he didn't make it. Just barely caught the plane. I think if we hadn't said something, he would have absentmindedly have forgotten the flight.
Do you remember when Worth Carter used to buy a bank and send John Well into a four-alarm fire, like four-alarm fire, that they'd have to get it repackaged and ready to go just like overnight almost.
That was frequent. And I remember the time years ago, we had a very valuable transparency, 8x10, that was to be used in an ad. And we had a gal there at the agency at that time that was a tidy-up fanatic. And in her hurry to tidy up, she threw the transparency away. So that created quite a bit of panic, as you can well imagine.
Yeah. How many people we have at our peak at Associated?
At our peak, we had 13 people.
That was probably when we had. It's interesting because work was more intense in a different way.
Oh, yes.
I mean, we were mainly an ad agency. We didn't have really a PR buddy. You know, we have maybe more people, but we really have three companies here. We have a group that does public relations.
I
That's pretty
understand.
much all they do. We have a group that does web programming.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all they do. What's the? You remember all the type houses and all that?
Oh, yes.
You remember how hard it was to set type?
Once the computers came in and a lot of the type houses went out of business, people started doing it themselves.
We were one of the first companies, I'm almost sure we were one of the first companies to have a Mac, because I think we had one in '85 with Associated.
It was mostly for clerical work then, though, as I remember, the computer.
What did you think when we got the fax machine?
I thought it was pretty phenomenal for that time, and of course, all the technology just made everyone want everything quicker too, because they got used to it. I remember we had a client then in San Antonio that had someone there, and they only wanted spreadsheets on everything. So the first computers that they had at Associated, and we probably were one of the early agencies or first agencies to have that here, was mainly used for clerical work.
You've already done this once, but I'd like to just get a second take on it. Tell me about Julie.
Well, I thought I pretty well covered that. She was a phenomenal person and a phenomenal creative artist. And she had, it still amazes me when I look back at all the work she did in her 50 years as a practicing designer. It was unbelievable. And,
What are some of the logos that everybody knows that she did? I mean, I remember seeing.
well, locally, I mean, her logos are all over regionally as well. Here in Roanoke, well, the kiosk in front of the main library downtown was her design. There's still a lot of them around. A lot of them have been changed over the years. The Bentry Apartments on Colonial Avenue, they're still using that. I think the 4-H Club at Smith Mountain Lake, still the Roanoke Valley Horse Show, the National D-Day Memorial in Bedford, to name a few.
Didn't you do the airport? The airport logo?
No.
For
No.
some reason I thought you had.
No.
Anyway.
Missed that one.
Yeah. Charlie, you did great. I really appreciate it. Like I said, we're trying to shoot this summer.
Mm-hmm.
Juliet or me or somebody may be in touch with you. I'd love to borrow some pictures whenever you.
Anytime you do it, my house is a museum
All
of
right.
graphics and stained glass windows and you name it.
I mean, we would love to have some of that to use as B-roll and that sort of thing.
Sure.